Welcome to this episode of Mercy Can't Stop Her. I am your host, Judith Kambia Obatusa, JKO. On today's episode, I have an amazing guest with me. It's always a wonderful thing for me to see a person who has dedicated their lives to making life better for other women. And my guest today has pivoted careers to be able to do that with the rest of her life. She's worked as a lawyer supporting women who are coming out of or in domestic violence situations and other kinds of traumatic life situations. And now she is back in school doing a master's in social work. Her name is Mayra Gonzalez. Mayra, thank you so much for honoring us with your presence on Mercy Can't Stop Her.
Hello, Judith, and hello, everyone that listened to us. And I just want to clarify that the program that I'm doing right now is counseling psychology. And I'm so honored to be here. I just love the space that Judith is able to create for all of us, and we can share our stories.
Okay, so you can see now, counseling psychology is more like actually what she's been doing. And it's amazing. So Mayra has excellent abilities to help a person who is in a difficult situation to find calmness. So first of all, let's hear a little bit from Mayra about her background. Mayra, can you give us a little bit about your story and why you are so passionate about helping women?
Yes, for sure. I feel that that's a big question for me in my life, because I have been advocating to support women's rights before I was doing as a lawyer. And right now I'm doing it in another capacity, so more as a crisis line supporter, whether having emotional distress. I have been a volunteer at Battered Woman Support Services as a legal intern as well. When I used to be a program officer at Success, I used to provide settlement and employment services to diverse clients, and some of them included women. As a woman, I have been experiencing different struggles even before coming or moving to Canada. So that's the reason that I feel that there's so much need of bringing that empowerment woman. And it's the energy that just gives me the passion to keep going and be able to provide that emotional support that a woman might be experiencing isolation or be just there as a human, especially these days with all the things going on around the world. It's so important to come together. It's important to, as a sister, to find our strength or inner strengths. And
I remember when I was talking to you and I was telling you that my passion is supporting women who are going through domestic violence. I want families to be stronger because the men treat their women better and the women are satisfied because they say the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And you said, oh, you were so excited about hearing about helping people with domestic violence. And you told me you had a reason. Could you tell us why? My story and what I told you was my passion resonated with you?
Yeah, so I will say that I have life experience about domestic violence. I grew up in a toxic environment, and it was really challenging as a daughter to be that child noticing those behaviors. And so that it was really hard for me. And there was a lot of trauma coming on in my family that still nowadays I notice that I have been doing a lot of healing. I'm so grateful for that and approach or reaching out for help. However, I'm still seeing that there's some pieces, right, or wounds that they were hurt that part of my family members that are still experiencing some kind of domestic violence. I understand and I have first hand of how that looks like and how challenging it is. And it's not just as a daughter, right? I can see when there are other family members in it, like seeing your mom as well experiencing that. And then as I was growing up myself, I was even having those toxic relationships. At the beginning, I wasn't aware about that as a teenager. And I'm so grateful that I have been that person who is always wanted to have open communication or reach out for help or ask for questions. So all those parts of me helped me to reach out for help. I'm noticing those signs, right? That I was even myself with those toxic relationships. So I was able to take away or remove myself from the toxic environments and just find a better way of being, because there's a better way of being. And it's hard. It's hard to grow up in that way of normalizing that domestic violence is okay, but it's not okay. And even as a lawyer, when I used to live in Mexico, that I actually advocate more for women and also children, especially in domestic violence, I noticed that friends around me, that also were struggling with domestic violence. And I was grateful enough to support them as well and take legal actions. And all of us are aware, like after pandemic hit, that domestic violence really, really amplifies. So yeah, I'm really close to the experience and I know how hard it is.
Okay. So you talk about having first-hand experience. There's a word you used a lot. You said, I noticed, I noticed, I noticed. When you talk about notice, give us some examples of the things you noticed, maybe in your friends, in family members, that made you recognize it as domestic violence. Just in case there's somebody listening and what are the things you noticed? Some of us are also bystanders like you were. We are in these spaces and some of us notice, some don't.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from as a friend, for instance, like one of the signs of for some close friends experiencing that would be isolation. They weren't able to reach out to us as a friend and having always an excuse for not connecting with the others, and even being afraid to be outside, even being afraid to do something by yourself because you need permission, right? For your partner. Feeling anxious after talking to your partner. And it's so subtle, right? That we can tell those red flags. But I will say a big one is isolation, right? You all of a sudden notice that your close friends are separating from you, or even for myself, right? Like just be with anxiety all the time, or be worried about like, oh, if I am arriving late, he might be angry. If I do that, like all the time, having this stress about how it's going to be the reaction, right, of your partner, right? Like, oh my, I need to report to my partner because if he doesn't know where I'm at, he's going to be angry. Those subtle things.
Awesome. So when you talk about anxiety and stress with these people, like your family members that you watched going through domestic violence or your friends, how did those emotional challenges play out in their lives? Because I might be in a domestic violence situation, but I don't actually recognize it as such until I begin to hear this kind of conversations. But I have anxiety, I have depression, but I don't recognize it. I haven't named it. So, how did those emotional issues play up in the lives of these individuals that you happen to notice have these problems?
I mean, you kind of like already described it a little bit, but definitely there's a denial that it's happening. But emotions are strong. Let's face it, like emotion, they will try to find a way to show up. There's some emotion that makes us feel uncomfortable, right? We don't like to be angry. We don't like to be sad. We don't like to be anxious. Like who likes that, right? It's so uncomfortable. But the reality is that your body also speaks about it. Like there's a need that you are not addressing, right? And I can see that even though is there the thought of denial, right? Your body speaks so highly in the way that you might be shaking. Perhaps you might have terrible memory about things you're not remembering what they're telling you. There's some subtle signs in your body that strongly that are asking you to do something, that there's something is off. You know what I mean? Like something is not okay. And actually, I want to say it takes courage to acknowledge those subtle signs from your body, or even having trouble sleeping. That's another, at least it was for me. Like I was having a hard time sleeping. I didn't understand why. But then I understood when I was having some help from Counsellor that it was part of anxiety, or it was part of stress, or that fear, right? Because you don't feel safe. Like you don't feel safe about that person, but it's interesting cycle that happens there, right? You don't feel safe with that person, but at the same time, you feel that you cannot live without person. It's a cycle that is so challenging. And I'm really grateful that you're asking these questions, Judith, and just to let people know that if this conversation might bring something for you, right? That you are wondering about it or curious to learn more about it. Like there's always crisis line available that you can just Google it. Or if you need to talk to someone after hearing us, you can reach out to the trained volunteers, also you can have emotional support.
Yeah. I remember when I was deep in the middle of these kind of situations, one thing that when I look back now, and then I couldn't connect it, was my quick temper. I got angry easily, very easily. I was very irritable. And then when I was always sad, I couldn't smile. I was always sad, very sad. If you're someone who is sensitive and you see me, you can feel the sadness. And that's one of the things that I have seen in my own life. Now that I'm more aware, I always notice that in other people. And I reach out to ask them, are you okay? I remember asking someone, I just felt something wasn't right. And when we finished the formal thing we're talking about, I now asked her, are you okay? She said, I'm okay. I said, no, you're not. You're not the person, the way you can share it. A problem shared is a problem half solved. And she broke down. So I think one thing that we can do as people, whether we are in domestic violence situations or we have been in domestic violence situations or we are no longer or we've never been in a domestic violence situation, being more sensitive to those around us is a helpful way to help. Just knowing there's someone who cares. Because one thing that these situations do to you is, like you said, being unsafe and feeling like nobody cares. Because the words that you hear in your relationship is saying you're not valuable. But when you see there's someone who will take time out of their busy day to stop, to follow up with you, to check on you, it's so important. It's so valuable. It makes a whole lot of difference. So that's something that we can do. Even when we have our own mess that we're dealing with, it doesn't stop us from caring. Yeah. My own challenges have made me more sensitive to other people's challenges. So apart from the fact that you're around you at work, through your work, and even in other situations, you were able to see people going through domestic violence. You mentioned that you yourself found yourself having that experience, but you taught yourself just in time to end the cycle. Tell us what you did. How did you recognize it? And how did you catch yourself and end that cycle?
I was at the university. It was like the second year of the university. I was studying law, actually. And dating with this person who also was a student at the same program like me. But that violence or domestic violence, even though we were just dating, was different. Like, was new, that it was hard for me to recognize that I was actually with someone who was toxic. It was tricky because the way that toxicity shows up was that he would not acknowledge me in front of others as a girlfriend, like we were dating. Those subtle things. Mm-hmm. And then we will just hang out after classes so no one will know that we are together. It was like hiding relationship that I didn't notice. So for me, it was like, well, the person is with their friends and we are okay, right? But it was weird, right? Like how someone will deny you in front of others or diminish you, right? It was like when we were actually together at school, he will be like, talking to me like another person, you know what I mean? No showing feelings, no showing emotions or kissing or whatever. So that was a big sign for me, to be honest. Like I wasn't aware until one friend was telling me like, how come that you are together and they never like take each other at the hands, or how come he doesn't introduce you as your girlfriend, right? And for me it was like, well, he has his intentions. I don't see why it's bad. You know what I mean? So it's just to start like this, right? So simple things, and then become a point that we'll just hang out in the night and in a park. And then I was like, yeah, I just feel like I don't have my space. I don't have my visibility as a girlfriend, right? And all the time will deny my emotions. And then it evolved into a more narcissistic personality in terms of like, if we would have a discussion, the person will say, no, it's not my fault, it's your fault. You know what I mean? Like gaslighting. And yeah, and I went through this toxic relationship, I think, for 3 years until I started going to my personal process in counseling. So before landing to a counselor, because it took me a long time, so I hear when people might not reach out to counselor. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to do it. But for me, my turning point to access to a counselor was that I was having suicidal thoughts. I was feeling alone. I was feeling disappointed, denial as a girlfriend, and also like having a family that wasn't really taking care of me or noticing what was happening with me. I thought about it, and I remember I just want to do a trigger warning for those who might be triggered for my comment. I hope that if you need to stop the recording, just do it. And if not, you can always reach out to crisis line to have support. I attained a little bit, but I didn't really perform it. Luckily, I acknowledged that I need support, and I talked to a friend. So this is what's happening. I'm having suicidal thoughts. I'm feeling so alone. And she was so supportive and compassionate, and she helped me, and we went and find a counselor. So that was my journey. And I started having the support that I needed, and I started talking to someone in a safe space about how was I feeling about the relationship. And to be honest, having a safe space to talk was like the best for me. And yeah, that helped me to see like, hey, this is not right. Like, that's the fact that someone is not recognizing you, giving your space, you know, as a girlfriend is not okay. And after that, I just took the courage to close the cycle that it's not me.
So what you described was basically emotional abuse. So everything was around manipulating the way you feel about yourself and to get you to be more attached to them. I think that's one of the things that emotional abuse does. Once again, when I talk about us being sensitive to others around us, it makes a whole lot of difference. Your friend noticed. At first, you didn't notice what was going on, but it was affecting you. But your friend said, why doesn't he talk to you like a girlfriend? And why doesn't he introduce you when you're out? And that triggered the thought in your head, and you began to see what you were going through. So sometimes, many times in life, we need someone else. That's why the Bible says it is not good for man to be alone. Many times they talk about it in marriage situations, but we cannot be without friends. The Bible also says God set the lonely in families. Friends are the first family we have before we go and call our father that is at work or our sister that is in another country. So it's very important that we are friendly by looking out for the next person. So you said you started to go for counseling, and counseling made a whole lot of difference. And I see today you help other women heal. So can you tell us how you moved from being the one counseled to being the one helping others now? What happened? How did you make that pivot?
I mean, I love your questions because they're so into the root of things. I mean, definitely I needed to focus first on my feeling that it was for me hard to acknowledge that something was off and something wasn't okay. And after be brave enough to do it, right? And going to counseling sessions, like even I remember that before quitting this toxic relationship, I kept going to counseling until I was ready. Actually, I was going to a grieving process of this toxic relationship even before saying to the person, enough is enough, right? We need to end this. Like I was going to my grief process before, so that when I felt ready, I just did it, right? And I feel so good and empowerment, and I feel like so good in my confidence. Like I have the control of myself, right? That this is who I am. Like circumstances cannot determine who I am. I can decide who I want to be. So after putting those pieces together on my healing part, I don't know, I just feel like, you know what, it's not just also me. I noticed that it's so normalized in society. I don't know if I mentioned before, but I'm coming from Mexico, but it's so normalized there in the context to know that to happen domestic violence. And when I was practicing as a law student, I noticed that a lot of clients, they were having that issue. Like we have a lot of women struggling with domestic violence and asking support, right, to have protection orders because safety was an issue. The same with child support, spousal support. And talking to people and clients led me to realize that's big. Like it happens and it's so normalized, and how come we are not doing nothing about it? And even when I was studying law, I had the opportunity to, have friends that they were taking a lot of programs and have contact with people working on the government. And I even realized that even people holding those positions in the government are also experiencing domestic violence. Like it's a big issue, you know what I mean? It's so hidden. So it gives me the power just to keep going and support women. And when I was in the process, when you go in a legal process, you need to talk to the person to see what they want to do, how they're feeling safe or not to do, all the legal procedures, right? But also I will encourage my clients always to reach out for counseling support, because even some of them, we will navigate to go through a divorce and have the protection order for safety. But some clients, they will feel afraid about it and they will decide to not keep pursuing the divorce. So it's a huge process for people, right? And that actually led me to learn that actually, as a lawyer, I wasn't doing too much. I was really helping people. But at the end of the day, there was something bigger, which is the piece that you mentioned, like healing the wounds, the trauma, the inner self. So then that's how I become more passionate about, there's another area that seems that it's more meaningful and deeply, which is healing the wounds, healing the internal, the psyche of the person. And then it's when I start thinking, you know what? I feel that I will create more impact if I support women by providing emotional support so they can heal those wounds and they can feel more empowered.
I want to take us back to something you said before. You said that when you were going through that relationship in the university, you felt, you had a family situation where that part of your need wasn't also met. That really compounded the issue. So for a woman that's listening to this podcast today, who is in a very difficult situation, but has a teenage daughter or son, is there any suggestion you can give? That's something that if you had during that time, it would have made a difference. That woman in that situation today who is listening could use some practice that she could use to help her teenage child, her young child. Because what opened you up to this situation was that gap in the house. So is there anything you could say to that?
I will say that I would like to have seen my mom reaching out for help. That will make a difference, because if she will have some help, she would notice that I wasn't doing okay, that I was having suicidal thoughts, that I was in a toxic relationship. But the thing is, it's hard, right? But I will say that for those who are listening, reach out for help and start healing yourselves. Because on the instance where your sons or daughter noticed that you're doing something about it, that you're doing some healing, it's going to impact in them. And it's so simple what I'm saying, but it's so powerful. And I can give you an example. So when I was going through my healing process by seeing the counselor, one time because my dad cheated on my mom a lot of times, which is part of the toxicity. And one time we have at home the husband of a woman that my dad was dating, right? And sorry, this is like a drama. So, Bella. So Pope. So the person came to house and he was begging to us. And he was like crying, like, please tell to your dad to stop seeing my wife. I don't know what else I can do. And I remember that before attending the door, when my mom saw the person, he knew who he was, right? And she was in distress, like definitely, right? Someone who might have seen that will be in the same way, right? She was in distress and so anger, like what he's doing here. Can you see all the pain that your dad is causing, right? And I remember calming her. And I remember being outside to the door calm. I listen to the person and I just say, I hear what you're saying. And it sounds like there's a little pain about what's going on, right? And I hear that. I just want to acknowledge that I'm the daughter. And there's nothing that I can do because you're asking me to do something that is not in my control. And the only thing that I can offer you, perhaps you need to see a counselor or a clinical psychologist, or perhaps talk to someone who can support you better. So after that, the person was like in shock, like that's so true, right? She's the daughter. Like, what am I doing here? I need help. So the person was with appreciation and he was feeling better. And all of a sudden, after I came back to home, my mom just looked at me and say, I think that I need to go to the counselor.
Wow.
That's how powerful it is when you are going through a healing process. It changes the way that you see things. And somehow people can tell.
What an amazing story. So helping yourself isn't just for yourself.
No, it's a ripple effect.
Yeah. So in this case, it was the daughter helping herself that helped her mom. But as women that are listening to this episode, that we have children and we're going through a hard time, seeking help for ourselves helps us be better parents to our children, better daughters to our parents, better friends to our friends, better colleagues to our work colleagues, and you better person all round. So that's why we're having the self-care series, so that we can focus on caring for ourselves. So Mayra, I want to ask you now, there's a woman listening to this episode who is in a difficult situation, can't afford a counselor. But is there something we can do in our spaces at home?
Okay, I just want to explain quickly what is self-care, in case that someone is not aware about what is that, right? When I came here, to be honest, this concept was new for me. I wasn't aware that exists. And now I love it. So self-care is that practice that you can do by yourself, and it can be free. You don't need a lot of time, and that helps to support you in a way that makes you feel relaxed, in a way that makes you feel more connected within you, in a way that makes you feel safe or makes you feel grounded. So we have busy lives, we have challenging times, and even if we are not experiencing domestic violence, like life is challenging by itself. So you can do a lot of different things for self-care. The first principle is to do something that makes you feel relaxed. For some people, or for myself, for instance, I would love to go outside for a walk. Like just having 5 minutes in nature. It's just a way to come back to the present. Like, hey, I'm here. Like, oh, I can relax. So, or some people might drink a tea because they make them feel warm. They come back to the body about what I'm doing. So some people think about that. There's a misconception about self-care. Like self-care is going to a massage, having a foot massage. Those things sound good. but it's not really self-care. Self-care is something that it's really attending a need that you have. And what happens is that sometimes, especially with domestic violence, our body is so triggered, is so stressed and so tense. So one self-care could be just going outside for a walk. But another exercise actually that is so handy, I call it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise. Even you can Google it. And it's about finding 5 things. Just look at 5 things around you, right? Like right now, I'm looking at my glass of water, my phone, my laptop, my screen, and I'm looking at my pen. There are 5 things. Just notice 5 things. Then the number 4 is touching 4 things that are around you, right? Perhaps I'm touching my t-shirt. I'm touching the table that I'm in. I'm touching my phone. How does it feel? I'm touching perhaps, I don't know, the wall. Just 4 things. Number 3 is noticing the smell of 3 things. Okay, it smell like the pizza that I have for lunch. That's one. Smell like my latte that I have here. And I can smell the freshness of the outside from my window. So there are 3 things, right? And number 2 is about the noises that you can hear or sounds. Like right now, I'm hearing my voice. That's number 1. And number 2, perhaps I'm hearing the birds singing outside. And one thing is the sense of taste. So past your saliva. The taste of saliva changes through the day. So you're going to notice a difference. So grounding exercise helps you to be present. When you noticed that you are spiraling or you're like, oh, so angry about this, right? I don't get that. You just pause and it helps you to bring you to the present. So you're like, what's happening, right? Or you're feeling more into your body. This grounding exercise, you can do it anytime. You can do it if you want twice per day. It's a matter of you. Another thing, and I noticed that you did it, Judith, you move your neck. You can just move your body. You can just shake your body. There's a nice, quick exercise that actually a close friend teach me. It's called the earthquake exercise. So basically, you just stand up and imagine that you're like a volcano and that it slowly is kind of like shaking. So you start shaking a little bit the legs, you're shaking your hips, you're shaking all the body, you're shaking the hands, you're shaking the head. So that's a way to as well, like just to calm down. Like if you're having a hard time or you're going to have a job interview, but there's some issues that you have with your family and you're so annoying about it, like go to the washroom before going to that interview at the office and just do the volcano and just shake, 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 shake. And let it go. And it works fantastic.
Those are so good. Very, very good. You see, we can do this anytime, anywhere in our spaces. I'm really grateful for that, Mayra, because I just want us to be able to take something away. What can we do for ourselves? We don't have to go pay someone. There are things we can do right where we are. So I really thank you for that. So I thank you because of the fact that you shared your story with us and the healing that you are doing, the healing that you're doing for others. It's been a wonderful time with you, Mayra. I mean, I am so grateful. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you to ask you a question or two about their situation, how can they reach you?
You can always reach out my email or LinkedIn. So by email, my email is Mayra, my name, which is, you can spell it as Mayra GON@outlook.com. And you can just find me on LinkedIn, my name, my first name, Mayra, Mayra, and my last name, Gonzalez, GONZALEZ. Feel free to reach me out to those sources or places. And yeah, I will be happy to any questions that you might have, or you're unsure about where you can reach out for help. I have some knowledge about amazing nonprofits that they can provide support.
That's amazing. So in the show notes, I'm going to have Mayra's contact details. I'm going to have links to the things she mentioned, the little exercises you can do. And you can always replay the podcast to listen to her and do those exercises in your spaces. It is amazing that we have these resources at our disposal, because in the deepest time of my pain, I didn't know all these things. I used to think when they say self-care, you have to go and pay for a spa somewhere and travel somewhere. But now, self-care isn't just that. Some people go to a spa and they come back worse than they left. So you can self-care right in your home. Thanks so much, Mayra. Go, please, your words.
Yeah, I just want to say that you don't need to spend a lot of time on self-care. That's one of the things, our challenges, that I understand that we are busy, right? And that I know that perhaps the exercises might be simple, like what Mayra is saying, right? How come I'm going to shake my body, right? How that is going to change how I'm feeling. I will just challenge you to do the volcano exercise. Just shake your body when you're having a hard day. Do it 1 minute, 2 minutes, or even play your favorite song and shake your body and see how that feels. I know that it's crazy, but I will challenge you to have the experience and just to see how you're feeling. And even there's another study that says that if you just go outside for a walk for a few minutes, that changes your mood and improves the way that you're focusing on your ideas. So don't believe me, try by yourself. And so happy to be part of this amazing program. Thank you so much, Judith. And I hope that my experiences can also support others, people experiencing some situations. And see you soon.
Thank you so much, Mayra. This has been an amazing time. And you heard it here. You heard it from Mayra. And I must tell you that in my own life, I just found out that just breathing, deep breathing can change your perspective. It can calm your brain. It's scientific. Actually read a book, The Body Keeps the Score. That book described what goes on in your brain when you take a deep breath. So sometimes it sounds so simple, but we just found out that simple things actually work. So try it and let us know how it went. This conversation with Mayra is the first in our self-care series, where we'll share tips that we can apply in our individual lives, in our spaces, to help our self-care. Next week, we'll have another guest who will help us on our journey to explore different aspects of self-care that we can use to prioritize our well-being. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review Mercy Can't Stop Her on your listening platforms, especially Apple. When you do that, it helps others discover the content and they're able to also benefit from it. Like I always say, when we share what we receive and we apply what we learn, Mercy won't stop us. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time.